Welcome, fellow Citadelians, you black-hearted heathens, to part 2 of the UK Black Metal episode. Last episode, we had Winterfilleth on. They were absolutely phenomenal, highly educated on all things UK Black Metal, so it was fun to talk to them. And they're very supportive of everyone in the community. If you guys are looking to get into black metal in the UK, that is one channel you definitely want to go through. Winterfilleth will just lend you a helping hand no matter what. So they're awesome. This episode, we've got a few other artists to talk about all things UK black metal. So we're going to start off with Fenn, London-based, also where we're based. Absolutely awesome atmospheric black metal sort of post-rock band. They've been going steady now since I think it was 2007. So they've got a lot of experience under their belt, a lot of amazing songs. So we'll be talking to the Watcher from Fenn, and that's going to be absolutely wicked. After that, we've got Rhys from Wolvencrown. So again, UK, they're in Nottingham, and they are just absolutely brutal. Anti-Christianity, proper black metal paganism, all that fun stuff. And then finally, we've got Ninkharsag in Liverpool, which we still haven't been out to. Well, I haven't been out to yet, but hopefully we'll plan a trip to their hometown soon. And they play sort of, war, ancient sort of historical occultist black metal. So very, very, very exciting stuff. So we've got all three of those artists coming up. So we're going to have Fenn on, Wolvencrown, and then Ninkharsag. And we will be playing a song from each of them after the interviews as well, so you guys can hear some of that awesome fucking stuff. And we'll go from there. Guys, thank you again for listening. Please support UK black metal, support black metal in general. It's a tough time for everyone around now, I mean, people are still sort of coming out of the sort of COVID era, and it's still not very easy to tour. So any kind of help you guys have for the artists goes a long way, and it helps to preserve this music. So truly, we are the vanguards of black metal. So let's keep it up, guys. All right, enjoy.
Well, greetings. We can't have a UK black metal episode without this band. Formed in 2006 and 6 full-length albums later and a couple of EPs, Fenn are veterans of the UK scene, playing something mixing atmospheric black metal, post-rock, a couple of other genres actually. It's sometimes quite uncategorizable for good, actually. Yeah. Deadlight is their latest album, and from the band today, we have The Watcher. And if you can please introduce yourself, or maybe correct if I've messed up anything about that intro. Let's hear from you.
No, thank you very much. Yes, I'm the Watcher from Fenn, and all your stats and all your information was completely correct. So well done there. You've done your homework. You've been on the Metal Archives page or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. 5 seconds before this interview.
Yep, spot on.
Oh, good. I like it. Solid prep. I appreciate that. No, that's correct. Yep, the Watcher from Fenn, as you say, been around since right at the very start of 2006. In fact, the ideas of Fenn were kind of being sort of they were sort of germinating towards the end of 2005. But 2006, we did that. We decided to go ahead and actually start what was at the time a project. So it's very strange to be referred to as veterans in some respect, because it still feels to me like that new project we started doing a couple of years ago.
So yeah, it's been quite a number of years now, and you've just come back from your first European headlining tour. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, 8 dates on the European mainland. I mean, they were actually postponed dates, so they were supposed to be part of the Deadlight tour that we did in March 2020. Obviously, for obvious reasons, that didn't really go ahead. We managed to do the 3 UK dates. As we were doing those dates, it became abundantly clear that the pandemic that was emerging across Europe was something that was going to render doing the rest of those dates impossible. So that was postponed. There's been a lot of back and forth over the last 2 years, a lot of will it, won't it. We finally managed to get over there and do it last month. And it was great. It was great to be back in Europe. It was great to be playing to those crowds. And it was a bit weird. The pandemic's still happening. There were restrictions still in some places to a degree, so it was a little bit of a knife edge in some respects, but it was just great to be out there playing to those audiences.
Was it a close call at, I think, Innsbruck, was it?
It was very tight.
Okay.
They did indeed. So we were playing in Vienna, and at midnight that night they were going to increase the rules. The next day we were playing Innsbruck the next night, and it was pretty stressful. Part of the problem was nobody really knew what it meant. it went from like 2G plus to 3G or something like this. There's all these codes and all these different kind of acronyms that are being used to describe it, and some of a lot of the locals we spoke to had no idea. You could even see it on the front of the papers. It was like, chaos, confusion, nobody knows what's going on. So I don't know. It's not for me to comment. I was there for 48 hours, maybe even less, but it seemed that they were chopping and changing their requirements and restrictions fairly regularly, and it was just leading people to be just utterly bemused as to what they were supposed to be doing, what they weren't supposed to be doing. But look, we played the shows. We got some people turned up, which I think was a bit of a bonus, really. If, given what was going on with the uncertainty, I think if it was one of my favorite bands, I'd have been, having to make a decision, probably I'd have erred on the side of caution and decided not to bother. So huge commendation to those people who did make the effort to come and see us.
Well, fingers crossed. Hopefully, it gets better a lot faster. Just the big thing for us is to always support the bands, whether that's on Bandcamp, buying merch, anything like that. Yeah, we always tell people, please, God, support the bands, because no one else is going to do it, man.
No, absolutely.
The listeners who are going to help everyone out of this fucking hellhole that we're currently in. So
I totally agree, and I think you get direct contact with bands in terms of buying merchandise, buying CDs, buying vinyls, or just reaching out, showing support. Even if you've got everything, just send them a message saying, "Love your stuff, looking forward to the next show." That sort of stuff, that kind of thing, is an essential part of the lifeblood of being in a band and investing the time and energy and money and just personal sacrifice into it. It's a lot. If you're an active gigging band that is aspirational, you're not just you're not one of these big bands that goes around and tours their best of hits and they've got a crew of people. You're a band at our level that wants to make new music, that wants to rehearse it and record it and spend the time on it to bring it to life in the way that does it the absolute justice. It does take time and it takes money and it takes a bit of investment in that. And you have to miss things. You have to put certain things on hold. You have to, you miss relatives' birthdays, you miss holidays, you miss this, that, and the other. And that's the sacrifice you make. And then if you're doing it and things are being made more difficult, so your access to the European market has been hamstrung, the opportunity to play these kind of gigs that validate all the sacrifices you've made are no longer there, you're going to question why you're doing it. Of course, there's artistic satisfaction, but then you think, well, we'll just become a studio project. We'll just do this. We'll record it ourselves, write it ourselves, and put it out on the internet, and that's it. Forget it. And I worry that we're going to see more bands going down that road where they're just looking at it. And particularly as people are getting older. If you're in your early 20s, you can put everything on hold, chuck yourself into the back of a van and disappear for a while. But people have got responsibilities and things they need to think about. The justification for making those sacrifices becomes harder and harder if the opportunities and the achievements that you can get from that are reduced. So I sound like a bit of a doom-monger. It's not a question of not being passionate about music and not wanting to create. It's about the whole infrastructure and ecosystem that surrounds that. And the things that give you that energy to keep on doing what you're doing. So it's certainly something to watch. But as you say, the best thing to do is just, if you like a band, don't just fire them up on Spotify. Get in touch with them, see them live if they're playing near you, speak to them after the show, buy a t-shirt, do what you can, because it's those small things that make the validation, not a check for 0.02p that arrives from Spotify every few months.
Perfect segue into Spotify. No,
we actually say that a lot.
We say that a lot. I mean, I trash talk Spotify constantly. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, when we play your song, you'll get your 0.02p for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, so I'll put the deposit down on the yacht right now. Bear with me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, sidetrack, but absolutely interesting good topic that I wanted to discuss. But going forward, I did want to bring it back to Fenn. I did want to ask, in previous interviews, you talked about being raised in the Fens and being inspired by it. I mean,
the band name, of course.
The band name, of course. Thank you. I mean, as a foreigner, I still have yet to see much of sort of the beautiful UK landscape, but could you maybe describe a little bit of the area for international listeners that don't know sort of the Fens?
Transport us there.
No problem at all. That makes perfect sense. I mean, the Fens is part of Eastern England, so East Anglia, that whole sort of lump that sticks out of the eastern side of the UK. It's kind of in the middle to the left of that area. It's basically a part of of England that used to be underwater. Effectively, it's waterlogged, and it was drained in the mid 1800s. I think engineers who drained a lot of the Dutch areas. So some of the landscapes in Holland are very similar. There's a lot of flat landscape in the northwest of Holland as well. And I think some Dutch engineers are basically contacted and was asked, can you do the same thing here? So the whole land was drained in the 1800s. I mean, it wasn't like it was the sea, but it was waterlogged and swampy. It was difficult to navigate. It was full of mysteries and kind of strange folklore. Obviously, Ely, which is the capital of the Fens, is kind of like, it's technically a city because it has a cathedral, but it's a small town. You know, it's maybe 10 to 15,000 people at most, but it has a massive cathedral in the middle of it. So it used to be almost like an island. In fact, it's referred to as the Isle of Ely. Why this huge cathedral is built in this sort of slightly strange desolate landscape, I have no idea. But it's a bit of a sort of
people needed to pray for an escape.
Absolutely, just get us away from. Well, this is it. A lot of these places were built as temples to create, you know, the opiate for the masses, which was the church. Don't worry, you're stuck in this ghastly bog-like swamp, but when you die, you'll have a nice time. So come here and give us some cash, and then you know. But I digress from that cynicism. So the areas, because it's essentially a lot of drained land, it's very, very flat, very wide open landscapes. It's really, it's spacious, but it's pretty bleak. There aren't many villages, are few and far between, and they're very sparse. You know, there's miles between them, just little thin patches of trees under the massive skies. There's, to be honest, not many people visit there. It's not like the beautifully visited areas of England, like the Peak District up in the north, you know, or the Lake District up in the far northwest, and those sort of areas, the Cotswolds, which obviously inspired Tolkien, down in the southwest. Obviously, those are fantastic landscapes, and they've inspired, and they do inspire English bands. You look at bands like Winterfilleth and other bands like that. They speak of those landscapes, which are huge and impressive and very English. The Fens is not discussed much, and there's not really much of a tourist industry there. Just sort of the occasional village full of slightly unfriendly people, and that's where we grew up. You know, we moved there when I was 10, and I stayed there until we went to university. So obviously, while I was there, I discovered heavy metal and extreme metal and did that. But obviously, this is in the days before the internet, so it was all completely remote. It was by buying copies of Terrorizer magazine as and when you could find it, or Metal Hammer magazine. And just really explore, or just literally sometimes going to a CD shop and just picking up a CD because it looked bloody cool. I mean, those are the days. I don't know what this band is, but there's some blokes wearing corpse paint. I'm buying it. Or sending off cash in the post to something that was advertising the back of Terrorizer magazine. So it's sort of that whole thing of growing up, becoming an adult, learning about extreme metal, set to the backdrop of living in this sort of fairly bleak landscape. And obviously, being that kind of character, I wasn't somebody who made friends easily. It wasn't like I was the popular kid at school, to put it mildly. I wasn't interested in sports. So it's a classic tale of that kind of, and I'm sure it resonates with many, many people of sort of that period in their life. But obviously, set against the backdrop of this pretty bleak, desolate landscape. It's not like, you know, there was not even anywhere to go and escape. So that really became quite symbolic of that whole part of my existence. And then I think the seeds of Fenn were kind of sown then. I did work on some very primitive black metal at that point when I was maybe sort of 16, 17.
Was this called The Curse, or is it before that?
The Curse came later. This is before that. This is just me with the drum machine, and the name Fenn was kind of bandying around then, but it never really went anywhere. It was pretty derivative stuff. I might, yeah, if the mood takes me, I might dig out a 4-track and some cassettes if I can find something just out of curiosity. But so the seeds are really sown then. But yeah, it was, so fast forward maybe, you know, 7 or 8 years after I've been in London for a while. We've been playing in Scout at Cuss for some time, but me and 2 of the other guys were starting to yearn to play something a bit more melodic, a bit more pastoral. We've really been enjoying shoegaze and post-black metal, and sorry, not post-black metal because it didn't even exist there, but post-metal, post-rock. And we kind of wanted to merge those together in what was a studio project. So I started writing some stuff in 2005. In 2006, first day of the year, I was like, right, guys, let's get into a rehearsal room and do this. And I want to call this project Fenn. You know, I've been toying with this, on the back burner for a long time. Let's make this a reality, and let's use this atmospheric shoegaze, post-rock inspired approach to black metal, fuse it with those bleak, desolate landscapes, and really start taking. So if you like our first EP, the songs are really sort of, Under the Endless Sky and Desolation Embrace. The songs really are shot through that whole idea. And so that really was the start of everything, and everything sort of springboards from that point. That is the point of genesis.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the Watcher is in a band, Fenn, obviously, but with his brother, Grungeon, and he plays bass and vocals. So I was always wondering, was your brother along for this whole journey? Was he on board the whole time? And who gets the top bunk on the bus?
Yeah, who fights over the bunk? Is it like a doom match? What's going on?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'll be honest. It's like, yeah, he has been there for most of it, actually. I mean, it's a classic case of getting into extreme metal and there's no one else around. And it's like, right, I need someone else to be in my band. You can be in my band because I live with you and you're younger. you're younger and you'll do as I tell you. And then obviously as he gets older, he starts getting taller and it's like, shit, I can't bully him anymore now. So, but no, he's been there for most of it. Yeah. I mean, we so those projects I was talking about when I was recording, very back in the early days, yeah, he would contribute to that at points and was very much descending into it at the same time. I went off to university, he being younger, was still sort of at school and in college. So I did some bands, for a few years that were just cutting my teeth, really getting used to playing live. And then when me and a friend decided to do Scout at Curse, my brother had moved to London and we were looking for a bass player, and I asked him if he wanted to be involved, and he was. And so, yeah, then it just went from there. So we've been kind of making music together for probably 26 years now. So on and off, as I say, there was a brief gap there, but that kind of it made sense. And he's really thrown himself into it. He's a great musician. That we often get comments about the quality of the bass playing and his approach to composition and how the bass lines work into the music and the counter melodies that they utilize. So yeah, it's great. It's great to have that communication. It occasionally means that family events are dominated by me and him boring on about touring plans or
oh yeah,
when's the next rehearsal. And to be honest, I get the top bunk. It's only because I'm smaller and it just makes more sense.
Inferior in every way. But you're also older, so I feel that qualifies you.
I'd rather have the bottom bunk, to be perfectly honest, because then you don't have to sort of drop down past somebody. But yeah, I'm smaller, so I sort of think it makes sense to go on the top bunk. I'd feel a bit nervous with somebody bigger on top of me. Every creak is like, are they going to crack through?
Yeah. Nice. And you guys have, I think it was, you said previously you moved out at 18, I think it was.
Yeah, I came to London to study. So I came down here to do a degree.
And so were you involved in the London black metal scene since then? How did you see the scene in London then and up till now? Because we've talked to a couple of bands, scenes in Manchester, Nottingham, but we'd like to hear more about maybe London. We're here. How has it changed over the years?
The London scene, yeah, it's an interesting one. So I had some minor interactions with it before moving here. I came down to a few gigs. I think I came to see Cradle of Filth and Cannibal Corpse a couple of times while I was still up in the Fens. But so I got vague insights into what was happening there. But in terms of getting into the actual underground, it was only when I moved here and then sort of met the right people that I started going to some of the really more obscure, unsigned band gigs and things like that. And it was a very swift descent into it. A lot of it centered around a few sort of key bands. So at that point, I mean, the band Akakok, which had literally, I think I went to their second ever show, and they were starting to take off. And a lot of it sort of centered around Terrorizer magazine. At that time, it was really perceived as quite a London-centric magazine, and a lot of the writers were based in London, so they would review a lot of London gigs, a lot of London underground shows that were happening. And the black metal scene wasn't particularly vibrant. There were a few bands, but the death metal scene was taking off at that point. So we had bands like Infestation who were making a name for themselves, Obsidian, who were based in London as well. We had, of course, Akakok, who were really starting to make waves. But the London scene was considered to be a bit of insular and a bit cliquey. It was like, they're all about London. No one really bothers to come outside of London and play anywhere else. So there was almost this rest of England and London perception that was going on. I mean, I enjoyed going to these gigs, but it was really death metal orientated, and that's why I was really pushing to try and start a black metal band. It was good. There were a lot of people into it, a lot of people who were really interested, but really there was, apart from Akakok, there wasn't anything that really started becoming quite exciting. And then as the early 2000s wore on, it started to become a little bit bitchy, I think, for want of a better word. There were a lot of people were leaping around online, and the internet was starting to take over at this point. So people were anonymously enjoying the anonymity of attacking their competitors and attacking other bands from the safety of a computer monitor. It was all a bit kind of like, this is becoming a little bit silly and a little bit playground, and there wasn't much music of worth being made, really. And it was, so that sort of 2000 to 2005 period it wasn't the best, to be perfectly honest. But then from that point, things started to turn around. I think there was a fresh wave of enthusiasm hit the scene. I think some younger people started getting involved, and then I think things started to become a little bit more nationwide. So we started speaking to people from people from bands like Winterfilleth and Woden's Throne and that sort of stuff, and this more national network of bands was a little bit more mutually appreciative and a bit more supportive started emerging. So from around 2007, 2008, things started to started to move in a quite positive direction. There was a huge amount of invention and creativity, and black metal bands, Forest of Stars, started around the same time. We had Ultra Plagues, obviously they were from They're from Ireland, but they would come over here quite regularly to play. And yeah, that was quite an exciting time, that period in the sort of late 2000s, when you could just really feel a fresh energy that was sweeping away. It would all have been about war metal and death metal, and who's going to be the most brutal and aggressive and offensive. And there was a slightly NS vibe was creeping into some bands, were toying with that kind of imagery. And you go to gigs and there'd be Sea Kyles and things, and it was like, this is not why I got into black metal. I was thinking back to when I was reading about gigs, back when I was in the Fens. I was like, this isn't what it's about. This is ridiculous. But yeah, luckily that was a relatively short-lived period. And yeah, it's just been really exciting since then. I think, the London scene has been really connected. I still think it's a lot of bands from outside of London like to play in London. There's always a big crowd here. There's always a big scene. It's accessible via, from different parts of the UK. And, big bands will quite often only play their one-off date in London. So it's a place that people are used to going to, and it has that vibrancy.
That's interesting you say that, because, we, like you mentioned, we talked to Winter Phillip. And we're discussing, do you think that UK black metal, it has evolved, like you were mentioning, and it's matured, but do you think it's got a distinctive sound? You know how they say sort of, you got the Swedish black metal sound. Do you think that we're at the stage whereby we're maybe emerging a specific UK black metal sound?
It's a tough question to answer, to be perfectly honest. It really, really is difficult, because a lot of those kind of like, you look at the Swedish black metal sound, and a lot of it is kind of, a lot happened in a very short space of time. And a lot of it was because bands were recording at the same studio. So everyone went to record with bloody, Dan Swan at Unisound, and it kind of sounded similar. And then they went to record with Peter Targent at the Abyss, and that all sounded similar. UK black metal used to be defined, I think, by its individualism. So you'd have one band, a band like Cradle of Filth alongside a band like Anal Nathrak, and then you'd have Balsa Goth, and it was all what was its defining quality, was its idiosyncrasy. Its defining feature ultimately was there was no overall sound. Everyone sounded very, very different, was doing their utmost to be individual. I would say now, I think there is a UK sound that's creeping in, and it's probably that wave of bands have looked at Winter Phillip, and they've looked at Woden's Throne, and they looked at us quite possibly, and they're taking that and they're synthesizing that through bands like maybe Maguire or Drudka, and I think there's a sort of melancholic melodicism that's definitely within the UK black metal scene now. I speak to a lot of people who are forming new bands, and I can hear there's a common threads running through it. They've all got their own take on it, but equally, I can hear that sound. I can see where the wellspring of influence has been drawn here. So I think there is. I think it's very much in that kind of, it's that sort of it's a pastoral, windswept, but not in a sort of cold and alienating way. It's more in a kind of like, it's a sort of a powerful and invigorating and warm fashion. So I think there is. I think it's taken a while, but I think I'd say more or less.
Yeah, like much of your music is about, nature, the cyclical themes of humanity, and even on the new one, our place in the cosmos. So that's what I feel like thematically, at least, some of the bands that are even springing up now, there's always those themes of our place, what's happening now, and connection with nature.
Yeah, I think so. I think that as a note, that's generally speaking, of course, there are lots of bands in the UK that are still ploughing different furrows. You've got bands like Heathen Dirty that are just pure old school satanic black metal. You've got the band Abduction, who are gaining a huge amount of following at the moment, who are playing that sort of really occult, sort of horrific sort of black metal. There's a lot of different styles and sounds that are still, as there will be in any scene. But if you were to go for that, what I'd describe as an overarching typification for UK black metal, I think it's definitely in that sort of pastoral, melodic, sweeping, sort of long songs, mildly progressive. We're not talking sort of, Tales from Topographic Oceans era, yes, but we're talking that's progressive elements, bands that are unafraid to write 10, 11, 12-minute long songs, or even longer, with lots of clean breakdowns, things like that. There's an ambition within that melodic sphere, which is great to see. It's great to see new people, getting up and standing up and doing that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And obviously you guys are seeing, I think you are seeing the same breath as many of those bands. Obviously you started very early. You're still putting out really consistent, solid records all the way through your career. And you always stayed true to your vision as well. That's what it feels like, especially when you had such long-standing members. And I guess through your years, is there any kind of mistakes that you've learned from, or like an important failure that really might have changed your course as a band, or that really impacted the way you do things as a band? Has there been anything like that since you started?
It's a tough question to answer. I wouldn't say there's any specific one or two big things where it's like, oh, that was a bit of a cock up, nothing so severe as that, but it's mainly sort of, learnings on the journey as you go that help you refine. Yeah, and it's little things really. I think at the beginning we were a bit naive. When the band was taking off, we could have got our business side of things sorted out a bit more thoroughly. I think you learn hard in this industry, and I think ultimately if you don't respect your own art and you undersell it, no one else is going to do it for you. Really, if this is something that took a little while for me to truly get to grips with. Yeah, I'm my own worst critic. I'm my own worst enemy. Every time an album's put out, I'm immediately listening through to it. What did we do wrong there? What was wrong there? What was the problem? We've put out albums that we recorded. Our debut was just recorded on essentially a glorified, it's a digital 16 track, and it was mainly recorded live. So there's mistakes all over it and things you listen back to. It's like, God, but it has a charm within that. So I'm not going to rubbish it. It's just, but yeah, I don't think there's anything where I can turn and say that was a balls up and it set us back, X number of years. I think for us, it's just a question of learning and making sure, for me now, it's like making sure that I'm going into situations with my eyes wide open and not being naive about stuff, and and you see this, and again, I don't want to go back to it, but these bands, that whole sort of associating with right wing and all that kind of stuff, right wing ideologies, and you've got to be, you can't get away with being naive about this stuff anymore. If you're gonna stand on a bill with bands that are openly NS or openly Nazi, you've got to expect questions to be answered. I think the excuse of it's all about the music, man, it just doesn't wash in 2022. And I think you're in danger of just, you're in danger of putting your neck in the noose if you do that, because it's being disingenuous. We're all that the box is open, we can't put the lid on it, and that's where we are. So things like that, I think we need to be careful about things like that, and just making sure that the material we record and the albums we put out as good as they possibly can be. That we're not taking any shortcuts, that we're as prepared as we can be when we go into the studio, and that we can hand on heart say that is the best thing we could possibly have done. We couldn't make that statement any more effectively than we did there, and by and large I think we've managed to stick to that.
Very brilliant. I was actually going to mention the fact that sort of, you did mention the creeping in of that NSBM influence earlier on, and I really haven't seen anything like that sort of in the UK, but it does creep on in different sort of countries within Europe, Eastern Europe and stuff like that. But it's interesting that you don't see more of that now, considering, the stories that you hear about, skinheads or, just
the divisive
nature. Yeah.
Society.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel almost like UK black metal really doesn't have.
We don't frequent those shows. That's why.
Well, maybe that's the case. I don't know, but I really do not hear much about it.
It's a very sensitive topic over here, because on the one hand, you've got people who are who are sort of very sensitive to the influence of right-wing thinking and Nazism and fascism in black metal, and then on the flip side, you've got people who are totally anti-Antifa and see Antifa wherever they go, and the woke leftists are trying to shut everything down, and they're trying to stifle thought police, censorship gets thrown around all the time, which is, it is a really tough. You don't see much of it over here, that's true, but it depends on who you speak to. There are certain people who see the right-wing infiltration of black metal everywhere they turn, and there are people who see the jackboot of Antifa shutting down everything they want to listen to everywhere they turn as well. Firstly, I just want to address this point of censorship. I think anytime we had a classic case of when Graveland tried to book a gig at the Underworld here in London, and the organisers who worked at the show didn't think, they didn't know anything about Graveland. Then they were tipped off by somebody, Antifa, which as far as I'm aware isn't even this big. It's not really it's not like a global movement. It's just a series of isolated cells who identify with the outlet. But somebody tipped them off. They did the Underworld staff did their homework and were like, oh Christ, no, these guys have come out with some really unpleasant racist stuff in the past. Of course, then we get the whole, oh no, he's changed his tune now. But it's like, well, I'm sure if you're noticing that the sales of the racists are drying up, and actually you want a platform somewhere which is a bit more sensitive to that stuff, you're of course going to change your narrative. It seems a little bit too convenient for me. But yeah, the Underworld said, no, we're not interested in that, actually, and cancelled the show. And there were cries of censorship from the use of suspects. Oh, censorship. I said, well, it's not censorship. This is a private business making a decision that they don't wish to platform a certain artist. The Graveland are perfectly perfectly within their rights to take their product somewhere else and see if they can sell it there. That's just one vendor which has said, no thanks. That is not censorship, and it reduces it, and it creates a strong argument to suggest that it is, because censorship, ironically, is a tool. It's really quite a powerful tool of the right. Censorship is the state telling you you're not allowed to do that, and that is very, very different. As ironically, if a lot of these sort of fascistic black metal enthusiasts get their way, their art is probably going to be the first thing that's deplatformed. You know, I don't think under a sort of black shirted fascist regime screaming about black metal and wearing spikes and leaping around on the stage is, you know, is really going to be de rigueur. It's going to be marching music and state songs about how great the leader is until the end of time. So it's really, there's a bit of a sort of turkeys voting for Christmas element to the whole thing. I just find it completely embarrassing, to be perfectly honest. And it's, you know, you think that people have grown up. It was worse over here in the mid 2000s. You know, I've been to gigs where there were Sea Kyles going on. There's still things going on. You know, I know that Desturma booked a secret show here a few years ago, and actually had a local London-based support band on the bill, who I know of, who are, you know, fully in that space. So it's there. They're being a bit more clever about how they do it. That said, you know, there is something you said for going too far the other way, and you know, and I do think that there are zealous proponents of the left which undermine their own cause by just tarring too many people with the same brush. You know, I remember being on tour with Ninkharsag, and they'd been accused of being Nazi sympathizers. Ninkharsag, just a massive bunch of hippies. They were distraught about it. And I was like, well, all you've done there is undermine your own cause, because now that band and their supporters are going to think, well, this organization has no credibility, because all they've done is they've just tried to encompass as many people as possible into this world of accusation without doing their homework. And if they're not going to do their homework that well enough to work out that these guys are not a threat, then they should, you know, what are they doing? You know, they have no credibility. So that was disappointing. But I've seen, you know, I've seen occasionally on forums bits like, oh dear, they play with Winterfell, they must be a bit sketchy. It's like, look, every time you throw those kind of accusations about and you haven't researched them properly, you're in danger of stripping the power from your argument. Got to be careful with this. So I think there are issues with both sides, but the right-wing problem with ultimately the right-wing problem with black metal has been there since its inception. You know, a lot of those early guys flirted with very, very edgy and unpleasant statements. Was it because it was the next level of unpleasantness after Satanism? Or was it just to upset their parents? Was it to gain notoriety? Did they genuinely believe it? It doesn't really matter. What was said, and a lot of those things are out there. So yeah, so I will always err on the side of caution. And I think, you know, the right-wing element, it's still there. We need to be vigilant, but just do your bloody homework and get it right. Otherwise, you do no one any favors. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant, but
no, you're right, and it goes back to the thread of you know what really is authentic and nowadays in black metal. What are people just doing for the shock value? What is actually true? What do they believe in? So you know, that's why we like to talk to bands, and you know guys like you, guys like Winterfell. They're just regular dudes who are passionate about their music. I love it. There's no kind of agenda on
mischievous acts. I mean, we were talking to Winterfell, and they said, I mean, they've been even painted with all kinds of brushes, and they were saying like, come and spend a weekend with me and my son running around the yard and see if I'm crazy right-wing demagogue.
No, of course. I mean, I know the guys from Winterfell very, very well indeed, and there's it's absurd when you hear accusations of fascism and Nazi being leveled at them. I mean, the problem Winterfell has is they unashamedly love the concept of English heritage in a very sort of open and non sort of exclusive sort of fashion. It's not saying our country is better than yours and therefore it's not nationalism in that sense, which can be a dangerous path to tread. They just try and say England is great, we love going to the Peak District, look at these cool castles, there's some great history here and we want to celebrate that with our music. But the danger you have with that is if you're going to make those sort of statements, you are potentially painting a bullseye, and you just got to expect people to criticize that. But again, I just think the people who are throwing out the criticisms, there's got to be proportionality to that. There's got to be proportionality. I just don't think you're doing anyone any favors by creating enemies and creating friction and distance where there doesn't need to be anywhere. Mm-hmm. And as you say, you sit down with Chris or any of those guys for 30, 40 minutes, and you realize how absurd those positions really are. But you need to be vigilant in black metal, because there are people who do have agendas, and there are people who do use beautiful landscapes and themes of ancient heroism and romanticism. Those are delivery mechanisms that have been shot that run through NSBM time and time again. Ancient pride, ancient heroes. These are stepping stones.
I
You
see.
know,
Yeah.
you've got to look at the language that surrounded, you know, fascism and Nazi Germany, and it was a lot of that was, you know, some of the stuff was, you know, the music, you know, was it's designed to stir, it's designed to encourage feelings of pride and self-determination, and there can be a pathway to, if you're not careful and you're not vigilant, and if someone is going to try and exploit an audience, particularly an impressionable audience, they'll use it, and there's no surprise that a lot of NSBN bands sound magnificent, you know.
It's a fine line because, you know, obviously you want to sing about your sweeping landscapes, and, you know, I want to segue into a little bit to talk about Fellwarden as well, because this is it's an episode about UK black metal, and, you know, you talk about the landscapes before as well in Fenn, and also I guess the Lake District with Fellwarden and that kind of area. So how did Fellwarden come about? And you know, you've got, I think, 2 albums now with Fellwarden. The last one came out, was it 2020?
Yes, it was. Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, maybe tell us a little bit more about, you know, that band and how that band was created.
Yeah, I mean, so that was something so for a while I'd been toying with the idea of doing like an epic sort of black metal project, like a solo project, but going down the unashamedly epic cinematic, you know, vibe of things. So going down that sort of moon sorrow, big keyboard, cinematic soundscapes, really taking that to the next level. And I said, yeah, I'll get on with this. And then one day I woke up and said, I've been talking to myself about this for about 5 years, and I still haven't got on with it. So one day I just said, I'm going to actually get on with this, because I was worried it's becoming one of those things you just always talk about and then you never actually do. So I actually knuckled down, started putting the material together, started you know, composing it and recording it in my home setup. Realized that my drumming was nowhere near up to scratch, so got in touch with my friend at the time, who then later went on to join Fenn, actually. But at that time, we were just working together on a couple of other scatter projects. And I said, look, do you want to record the drums for this? Because he was quite into that style of black metal. And he said, yes, he had a home recording setup. And so it kind of just evolved from there. And I've been spending more time in the Lake District. My partner, she has sort of family connections up there, so we go there quite regularly. It's an area I'd fairly recently started going to, really sort of warm to it. Again, that's very sort of, that's almost like the apex of the sort of rugged English landscape. Yeah, it's the complete opposite of the Fens. Yeah, the Fens is mostly under sea level. The Lake District landscapes, they're some of the highest points in England. So it was literally alpha and omega in terms of. So that was very much in the rather than the sort of sad, reflective, isolated despair that comes from Fenn. This is more about kind of, you know, grandeur, splendor, still resonating within man, and just, you know, and talk of sacrifice and nobility. And I get it. For me, you know, doing that and putting that together and making that very directly about those topics, you know, I know that's potentially open to misinterpretation, and I know that's a kind of thinking and a kind of language that has been used previously by bands that are trying to sell something perhaps a little less savory. So I'm always very careful in interviews, and, you know, to make my position on that sort of thing abundantly clear and ever more clear. You know, and maybe in the early days I was a bit more kind of like, well, man, it's just music, we're not political. I'm sorry, you can't choose not to be political if you live in human society. So, but yeah, so Fellwarden is about that sort of style of things. We've done 2 albums, and, you know, really, it's a great way for me in terms of songwriting. There may be surface level similarity between what we do with Fenn, but Fellwarden does operate on very different principles. It's about describing something sweeping, about a lot of repetition and build within that repetition. So really, you're almost like ebb and flow, like some sort of elemental, you know, the pull of the tides, you know, and yeah, and as I say, it's just a good opportunity to sort of flex those muscles.
Lots of beautiful areas of England inspire, and I think maybe Chord and I should make an album based on Canary Wharf.
I mean,
a desolate, rich landscape of greed, kind of like Imperial Triumphant, you know. Do a little like a.
I like the sound of that, actually. You could fuse the sort of stark right angles of the urban landscape with the sort of swirling mass of sort of rat race greed and
exactly. Just steel and glass.
Yeah, steel
black
and
metal.
glass, and Starbucks is every fucking 10 meters.
Yes, steel, glass, and just an absolute disregard for fellow mankind.
Yeah.
I mean, this is writing itself.
And let's say you guys are headlining London, and I know, you know, you like your beer, you like your whiskey.
Yeah.
Where do we go for the pre-show beers here in London, and what are you having?
Bloody hell! I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. If I'm going for pre-show beers, if it's a gig, so say up in Camden or something like that, I'll probably take myself up to the Southampton Arms, just up from Kentish Town.
Oh, okay.
And have a few pints of fine, English cask ale.
Cask ale. Yeah, there it is.
Hell
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, they do also have a number of taps of sort of craft as well, so some craft keg stuff in there. But yeah, that's my go-to place every time. Certainly if it's the Kentish Town Forum, and even if it's in Camden, I'll try and fit it in. It's a little bit of a journey down to Camden from there. It's a walk and a stop on the tube, but it's easily done. That'll be my suggestion. I mean,
we should do that. Yeah.
It depends where it is. Depends where it is. But also, look, in central Camden, Brewdog and Blackheart are very close to each other, and they're always a really good place to spend some time. There's always some good beers in there. Not cheap, but good vibes, good atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. And just wrapping up now, I guess we want to know, what's next for Fenn. Obviously, you guys have wrapped up the tour. You had your album back in 2019. That's done well. Is there kind of a new route, new album, EP, or is it just planning to tour more? How's it looking like for the next few years?
I mean, hopefully big things ahead. We recorded a new album last year, so our sort of lockdown project. We really, my thinking was, as soon as lockdown hit, it's like, well, we can't rehearse, we can't play live. What can we do? We can write and we can create. So wrote a lot of material, I brought to life a lot of material that had been building up to that point, finalized it. We then got our new drummer on board middle of 2020. We actually had access to a little rehearsal space. We spent a lot of time just working on the material, and then recorded it in sort of May, June last year. So that's done. Most of the artwork is done. All we need to do now is just finalize the inlays for the artbook edition and get some photographs taken. And then fingers crossed that should be out end of this year, depending on label scheduling. So yeah, there will certainly be a new album within the next 6 to 9 months, he says, with a vague element of confidence. And then, obviously in the interim for us at that point, it's just, we need to be putting plans in place to do more live shows. I think we've got one show potentially in Italy in July. We've got a gig in Manchester in September. That's kind of it for now, but obviously we really want to start getting shows for the second, maybe last quarter of this year locked in. It would be great to play some festivals, get a tour in to support the new album maybe next spring. So all that stuff needs to be brought into line. But obviously, we're still writing. There's still some material for is being produced and germinated at every stage. So but new album
never ends, does it?
Well, it may do. The day it does is the day that we sort of may have to really seriously think about knocking things on the head. But as long as the flame burns, then there's no reason not to do it. But yeah, as I say, for me, the next big thing is just getting all our ducks in a row for the new record. I think it's a good one.
Brilliant. Well, you heard it from the Watcher himself. Any final words to the audience? Any requests? Anything you'd like to shout out?
I think we've covered things in considerable detail. So just thank you for the opportunity. Sorry I was late. And
you weren't late. You were right on time.
So the second invite. So the
magic of editing.
Yes.
No, thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate this. And we hope to see you live soon, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. I mean, if we do, once the album's out, we'll be doing a live, London-based launch release show. So and hopefully some more shows. So.
Great stuff. And for our listeners, we'll play a song from you now. And I think one of my favorites, I think a lot of people's favorites is Menhir, Supplicant. And it sums up your sound very, very well. So that's the one we want to play.
Makes sense.
Unless you want to change it.
No. The Menhir is always a good one. That's always that tends to be a good one live. It gets the juices flowing. So
excellent. All right, guys. Well, here it is, and enjoy. And thank you again.
Cheers.
Cool.
We're here with Wolvencrown and Rhys, who plays bass for them. Rhys, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Really good. Really, really good. We had the pleasure of seeing you guys live. I think it was sometime in February, opening up for the Chronodical. Really good show. You guys have been doing a couple of tours. And I just want to start off really by talking about the band itself, of course, and the history of the band. How did it come together and why?
We've always been friends. We've known each other for years. Me, Nick, Matt, and Will. We just got together in a room and we just started playing black metal. We've always listened to black metal, so just one of those things. And then we've had a few members come and go over the years, but yeah, we've always known each other. I went to school with some of them. It's just one of those things. So started in 2015. I think we started.
Nice. So it sounds like it wasn't really difficult to get a couple of like-minded people who like to play this style of black metal in Nottingham. Is black metal quite popular there? Has it always been quite popular in that area?
I don't know if it's always been popular, but we do have there is a lot of decent black metal bands in Nottingham at the moment. You know, you got Anta, Abduction, obviously just in Derby, which isn't far. Arcs Atrata, which is one of my favorite black metal bands. There's a lot of decent black metal in Nottingham, so it's a decent scene. You always get a good turnout. Shows. So
yeah, no, it's true. I saw Jack in another interview mentioned late last year, even during the pandemic times, that the UK black metal scene is really healthy at the moment. Do you think it's gotten only
for sure
better?
I think so. Like there's always new bands coming out. I think it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. Really, you start to see more UK black metal bands on the UK festival circuit nowadays as well, whereas you didn't really used to get that. So I think it's in a healthy place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. There's so many good bands, and obviously a lot of shows are coming in through London as well. There's shows in the north of England, and I think it was Nick from the band. That he's active as a promoter as well.
Yeah, Nick runs Atmosfest, which is it's a atmospheric black metal indoor festival that he puts on in Nottingham. He hasn't done it for a couple of years because of obviously the pandemic, but yeah, he used to put on. We've had Winterfiller play. We've had like loads of like big bands. Sayor played one year. But yeah, he's very much involved in the promotion side of things too.
Yeah,
Nick is, which is obviously a big help. So
yeah, and it's a lot of those bands do kind of play a distinctive sound, I guess.
Yeah.
Based on the name itself, Atmosfest.
Yeah, it definitely caters for more of the atmospheric side of black metal, I'd say, more than anything else.
Do you think that's like the UK sound is atmospheric black metal? Because we know several countries have their own distinct kind of black metal identity, so to speak. Yeah. Do you think that the UK has a distinctive sound as well?
I would say no. I would say the UK takes influence from all of it. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of black metal bands that are really raw and fast paced.
Yeah.
And there's black metal bands that are the complete opposite, where it's a bit more slower and atmospheric. So
okay,
it's a bit more varied. It's a bit more variety, I'd say, in the UK.
So I think it's harder then in terms of like for the UK to the black metal scene to drive sort of down that line of between sort of maybe black metal that's a bit more traditional and not being lumped into like subgenres like atmospheric or DSBM or something like that.
I mean, maybe. But I feel like that's something you're always up against anyway in any band in any scene. But yeah, it's definitely something you have to contend with all the time. I don't know. It's just everyone's got their own preference on black metal. Everyone likes it a different way. So yeah, we just like the atmospheric style. That's what we do.
Okay. All right. Well, my second question wasn't actually going to be about DSBM, but because I did see Nick wearing a silencer shirt, so I was going to ask if he is absolutely a fan, because when I've heard some of his sort of higher octave like screams and echoes, it sounds a little bit more like Nat Ram to me. And I don't know if you know, but I am curious if he is a fan, because I'm absolutely obsessed with the band.
Well, me and Nick are both fans of Silencer.
Fucking brilliant.
There you go.
Nick actually owns Nat Ram's. He brought out a book called Grishiata, which means pig's heart. Nick bought that. It's just like just the strange ramblings of a crazy guy.
Oh my God, that is fucking brilliant. Okay, cool.
I'd like to see this next time.
Yeah, I really would like to see this as well. I've been trying to track down who Nat Ram is for like the longest time. Like no one knows anything about him either.
Yeah, he's a bit of a myth. But, yeah, me and Nick have always been big fans of Silencer, so that's definitely where the influence, especially earlier songs that we did, that's definitely where the influence came from with the vocals.
The fucking sounds brilliant.
And what about your playing? Where do you gather your influences from? I mean, of course, in atmospheric black metal, the bass is an essential sound to creating that dense atmosphere. Is there anything that you take from?
I don't think so. Obviously, I have my favorite bass players, which would be like I always like people like Lemmy and. Do you know what I mean? People, because I play with a pick, but my sound isn't anything like that. I just try and do what fits the music, basically. I just try. Do you know what I mean? Just whatever the song needs, I'll just do. I don't have like a particular style, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nice. And just talking about the album, really, you guys have released a full length in 2019, followed it up quite quickly with an EP, A Shadow of What Once Was. Is there something different that you guys worked on that EP? Do you feel like it's a continuation? Because obviously there's been very different song on there finishing that, which
Yeah.
is more of a synth-driven approach. Is this something that you're actively working towards? Was it a natural evolution, or was it just simple experimentation of an EP at a time where there was no shows available, really?
Well, with the EP that we brought out, those two songs were songs that we've had like written for a long time. Even when we brought out the album, we already had those songs together. But the instrumental piece at the end of that EP, that was just, I think that was just Nick just wanted to experiment with more instrumental pieces, like because we both like dungeon synth. So and we're one of our favorite bands. I know they're not a dungeon synth band, but is Menhir. It's probably one of our favorite like black metal bands ever.
Great band.
That is one of my favorite bands as well, coincidentally. So Journey to the End obviously has been a big inspiration. And
yeah, exactly. That song in particular is all that instrumental piece that they have. Obviously, we just want our little. Obviously, another big band that we all enjoy is Summoning. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those bands. Definitely, they have those deep, long pieces where there's the synth is not only the supporting instrument but also the lead instrument, and that's what I felt like. Okay, let's bring that to the forefront a little bit more. And I saw that you guys are planning for a new album in 2022. Is that sound? Do you think that'll be more present, or can you tell us a little bit more of the direction of the album? Is anything written?
Yeah, it's all written. We're in the process of recording it at the moment. We've got the rough tracks basically done. It just obviously needs we need to go into the studio and record it all properly first. But yeah, all the songs are written. It's going to be obviously a lot more of those instrumental pieces as well that you heard on the EP. There'll be a lot more of that. But yeah, I'd say they're the best songs we've ever done, and they're a mixture of everything we've done so far. So it's quite like a varied sound on this album that we've written. But yeah, it's coming along nicely. It will be out at some point this year.
Brilliant. And maybe if you can let us know in terms of sort of the lyrical content, is it going to be maybe certain parts of English history, folklore? It's going to inspire it.
Yeah,
maybe some paganism, some anti-Christianity. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of it's obviously ties into nature. A lot of it ties into fucking mental health and depression, that sort of thing. It's just a mix of loads of things. I mean, Nick writes all of the lyrics, so I think it's just whatever inspires him at the time. So
I think on that first album you had 1194, which was, I think, Richard I. Was it the siege of Nottingham?
Yeah, it was about like a siege, Nottingham Castle.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, Nick does all the lyrics, so I think just whatever he's interested in at the time is he writes about, So.
Yeah. Well, it's important to, I think being inspired by, England, whether it's history or
there's just so much nature. Yeah, so much epic.
Yeah.
Or whatever Boris is doing, which also deteriorates our mental health completely.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Important things to write about. It's, what affects us. People write about what's personal to them. And I think that's, that's important because it comes from an authentic place.
Yeah, definitely. I think his lyrics have gotten better as well, like with every song that he writes too. So I haven't actually read much of the lyrics for the new album myself personally, but it sounds good from what I've heard.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm assuming once it's out, you guys are going to be touring, showcasing all the songs.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're already playing quite a few of them. The shows that we're doing now.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, you've got April shows lined up, don't you?
Yeah, we're touring with the Infernal Sea. So we've got a few shows lined up with those guys.
Yeah.
So we'll play a few songs that haven't been released yet. They're our best songs. They're the best songs we've written yet. So it makes sense to play them live. Do you know what I mean? So
of course. Is it mainly Northern England that you'll be playing, or any London dates or Southern dates?
You know what? I'm not sure, but I can check right now.
I did
down.
see mainly
Come to
Northern
London.
England, but it would be great to see you guys again and
yeah.
be able to catch up after the show in person. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, man. That'll be always down to do that.
Yeah.
No, we're not playing London.
No.
Man.
Just check. Sorry.
Damn. Okay. Gonna have to travel then.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. Okay. Well, we did have then one, I guess, final question before we do head out. But tour, drink, collab. One band that you'd want to tour with, one band in the UK you'd want to drink with, and one you'd want to collaborate with on an album. I know you're putting you on the spot, so I do apologize.
Starting with collab, I'll say Arxatrata, just because I think they're the best black metal in Nottingham.
Okay.
And
Nice. Sorry, which one was that again?
Arxatrata, and
Okay.
it's a one-man black metal project. And check them out, because I think they're the best black metal, some of the best black metal in the UK. Deserves a shout out.
Bold words.
We'll check them out.
What are the other two? One's going to tour with. Jeez. They have to be still going. Like a band that's still
No,
around.
it doesn't have to be.
No.
Be as creative as you want, really.
Motorhead for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you
bro.
can handle the drinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can keep it with Lemmy, but I'll give it a good go.
We'll give it a go.
Okay. And one band you would want to drink with.
Would want to drink Pantera.
Oh God, that would be an absolute brutal night. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Really appreciate this. Is there anything that you want to let our audiences know in terms of, obviously you guys are touring, you got the new album coming out, and then in terms of collabs or merch or anything you want to discuss?
Yeah, just obviously hope we get to see you at one of our shows that we're doing this year. Look forward to seeing you all, and thanks for checking us out.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, bud.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey guys, this is Chernoglav here for the Heavy Metal Citadel podcast. And I am here with Kyle and Alex from Ninkharsag, which I think I pronounced correctly. And these guys are going to be putting on a show tonight at the Black Heart in London. How are you guys doing today?
Good, yeah. Looking forward to this.
Brilliant.
Yeah, looking forward. It's been a while since last gig in London, but yeah, let's see how it goes.
And I mean, this isn't your first show this year. You've played a couple of times. I think you played in Liverpool recently.
Yeah.
How's it like to play live again?
It's good. Yeah, it was. We played 5 dates last August as well. So that was sort of after all the lockdowns lifted.
Yeah.
So that was good to get. The first show was London actually, which was quite cool.
Okay.
So it was a great night. So good to be back on stage.
Yeah.
Crowd really fucking turned up and went nuts. So it was cool. So hopefully you'll have a repeat of that tonight.
Brilliant. So they're already accustomed to the new songs on the album then?
Yeah, so because it came out last April, people have had a lot of time to digest it now, I think. And and we're playing the full album tonight. This will be the second time we've done it. So
great.
in
And
the row, actually, yeah. Second time in the row.
is that like a vision that you had as well, or is there something that happened naturally that you're playing the full album?
It was sort of just, we knew we wanted to do an album launch, but the circumstances last year were just too precarious to bother. So we decided to do it earlier this year and do a local show in Liverpool, because we've not played in Liverpool in a long time.
Yeah.
So sort of hometown show, even though most of us don't really live there anymore. So, but still, it was a lot of old faces.
Yeah.
But a lot of the songs on the album we didn't actually intend to play live, so it was interesting to do it. But because the songs are still fresh in our memories at the moment, and had a band pull out for this gig, we thought we might as well just fucking do it one last time before we forget the songs again.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea.
Never say last time, you know.
Yeah.
It's gonna go.
No, I love it when bands play the full album, because it just really puts you in their vision for what it's supposed to sound like all the way through. Obviously, there's a lot of melodic aspects to this album. It's a little bit different than the last one. I think there's a little bit more heavy metal influence. The leads are quite emotional. There's a lot of mixing up in terms of the dynamics of the album. Is this something of a conscious evolution for the band?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it was always intentional. I mean, some of the songs that are on the new album we actually written before the first album came out.
Okay.
So we we knew we wanted the second album to be a bit more focused. The first album was generally just a lot of demo songs that we had, and in fact when we recorded it, it was just an EP, but then it came out on Candlelight and it's called an album somewhere down the line, and it just stuck. And then so it became something. In our opinion, it's an EP. So this is the first album, but in reality, like So that's why it's different, because a lot of the songs that we were working on for the album have only just come out now. But I mean, there's a song on the new album, Disciplines for Black Sorcery. We actually played it at our first ever fucking gig.
Wow, really?
Yeah, first ever gig was London, actually, in Camden.
And how long ago was that?
2010 or 11.
2010. Wow.
So we actually played that song then in a different form, slightly.
Okay.
So yeah, we already knew what we were working towards, but it just took a long time to actually get to this point. But.
And Alex, were you around?
No, I only joined the guys in 2018. So yeah, they've, as Carl was saying, they've already written most of the album. It was just little touch-ups to finalise song structures, but they've written all the melodies, all the harmonies, all the structures. So yeah, it was really exciting to come and join and record these songs and play them. It's,
nice.
Yeah, the more you play them, the more you realise what a good job it's done, really. So
yeah, of course. And was it really hard pulling together a band? I mean, in Liverpool, like-minded musicians. Was it easy to find the right people for this project?
Well, it sort of took a while. I mean, it was originally started by our drummer Jay and the guitarist Paul. So they had started jamming out some tracks and stuff. And Paul had some demos. He showed me. We toured together in different bands years ago, and he showed me some demos, and I was like, "Fucking hell, these are good." Yeah. And I have my own material as well that I've been working on, but it was so hard to find black metal drummers. Especially in Liverpool, where there isn't a big scene for black metal at all. Yeah. And so when these guys said to me, "Oh, do you fancy doing some vocals for this project we've got going?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So it just sort of snowballed from that, really, and then we just sort of
killed it.
Yeah, it was fucking. Yeah, we've been working together since. And it was really easy to get. Once we got the ball rolling, it was piece of piss.
Is this Jay?
Yeah.
Oh, hey Jay. So, hi, I'm from the Heavy Metal Citadel podcast. So we're just doing an interview with the guys. I'm glad you could join us as well, because I was going to ask as well. For yourself, you've been around for quite a while. I'm sure all you guys have. And what did you think? I mean, at the beginning, up till now. How has the scene in the UK changed specifically regarding black metal?
There's always been sort of a solid sort of group of bands that have always sort of done the scene, and we've played with quite a lot of them, and it's a strong scene in itself. But I do think the ideal market that we're working towards is Europe.
It's international, of course.
Yeah, we want to get over more to Europe, playing with the likes of Hordem Rife and those type of sort of bands.
Hordem Rife, you said?
Yeah,
great. I saw them in Poland. They opened for Behemoth. A really, really great live band. Yeah. Really great live band.
So I think that's where we're sort of trying to aim towards. I mean, we did have some stuff originally booked for Europe was it the end of this year?
It was supposed to be May this year, but we've had to cancel it and move it again to next year now. So.
Oh, it's unfortunate. That's the nature of things nowadays, isn't it?
Nature of the beast in the current state of the world, but we'll get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what about you guys? How do you feel about the black metal scene nowadays? Do you think it's really good in the UK, or is it more about being a UK black metal band is not an identity, but more so it's everyone kind of doing their own thing and being able to reach as many people internationally as possible?
I'd say it's definitely got stronger over the years and a bit more sort of focused way, because a lot of, especially when we started the band, the original reason we started this band was because sort of black metal had moved on from what it used to be in the 90s when we sort of got into it. So there wasn't really any bands who we thought were still flying the flag of old school traditional 80s, 90s black metal.
Yeah, of course.
So for us that was the whole point of starting the band. But in the UK though, I'd struggle to think of a band who sounded anything like us when we first started.
Yeah, and I mean, I still struggle. I was gonna say,
I think that's we know what we want to hear. So I think selfishly, this album was for us. We recorded it in 2019, and it only came out last year. So, it took fucking 2 years from having the album finished copy in our hands to getting it out to the wide world. So we've been sitting on it and listening to it for that time. So when it comes out,
it's a little bit old for us now. We've already got a lot of new material in the works, so it's we're going to be focusing more on that now. While this is still quite new and relevant to everyone, it's like to us, it's not in the past, but it's
Of course, it's been hard with the delays, not only for the shows but for the vinyl as well.
That was the reason it just took so long, because we didn't want to release a CD then the vinyl. We thought, well, because we wanted it out in 2020, start of 2020.
Yeah.
And the vinyl was delayed until April last year, so that's why we set the date.
Okay.
But it came out at a good time when people had more, time at home to listen to new music or, discover new bands and things like that. So it's done well in that regard, and it has generated a bit of buzz.
Yeah,
and
it's something you got to listen to on vinyl as well. So it's good that you guys waited.
But it's, we purposely recorded it so that it sounded like an old school, heavy metal record from the 80s. We went all in the fucking big drums, and the guitars are swamped in reverb, and it's like bands today don't really. Obviously, certain bands do, but I don't know. We had like a clear vision of what we wanted, and we never really took into consideration what any other bands were doing anywhere, really, even in the UK or around the world. It was like, right, this is what we want. And if people don't like it, then whatever, but we fucking love it, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters, and obviously everyone else loves it here because you've got a pretty big crowd tonight. Especially, I was just thinking, there's a lot of bands. You're right, you fill a niche. When I think of UK black metal, there's some newer bands like Wolvencrown. There's obviously Winterfillet. There's Woden's Throne. These guys are lots of ambient nature. I think you guys touch a lot of different lyrical themes, but also have that kind of second wave sound, which isn't really represented around here either. But in terms of the production of the album, it was the producer from Winterfillet, was it? That did the project, yeah. Do you guys have any interaction with like other UK black metal bands? Is it like a tight scene? Do you share ideas?
I'd say we know most of them, but played with pretty much all the, everybody of note.
Yeah.
From the UK. We're friends with Winterfillet, and
lots of support them in the scene.
Yeah, we toured with them, played with them a few times over the years, I played in a band with Simon and Nick once, so I'd say but we are like markedly different in regards to sound, though. That's the thing. It's they've got their own sort of style, whereas like say we
it's not a competition like you had.
Well, no, that's it. So
everyone
it's
reaches
completely different styles, isn't it? You can't really compare the two.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's subjective, but when you got your objective set out to what you want to sound like, it in a way makes it a lot clearer for everyone. And I can't remember who it was who said that you sort of don't listen to what everyone else is doing, you just hear the ideas in your head, and that's what you follow. That sets the atmosphere, sets the style of the music, sets everything, and that's where your songs come from, really. So,
and that's a great way to also it's great advice to young bands as well, I think, to follow your own vision and have no compromise. So we're reaching the end now. I just wanted to ask you guys, obviously a lot of things changed in the past few years. What's the best way to support a band like Ninkharsag in 2022?
Well, just you can buy some merch, come to a show when we can play, stuff like that, really, and keep sharing the fucking album, spreading the word, because we're not on a big label, so everything that we've had to achieve to get the album to keep selling out is off our own backs, really. I mean, the label we're on, Vendetta, it's just one guy.
Okay.
And he's got like a PR company that he pays to have promotion and stuff, but a lot of the time it's just us, fucking hammering it in any way we can.
I see you guys are pretty active on social media as well, which is honestly quite a prerequisite nowadays.
You've got to be, this is it. It's like you've got to be so savvy, and unfortunately it's so time consuming, so everything
it is.
Any way you can fucking help, spreading shit and liking comments or whatever, just fucking everything helps, and it's so just keep doing what you can online for us, and we have our fucking eternal thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Anything else to say to our audience? Any final words? That's it?
No. Just come down to a fucking next show.
We'll say what we have to say upstairs when we're on.
That's it. I'm going to put a bed in myself.
Agreed. And I'll be up there too. I've got a ticket, so can't wait for the show.